It was a cold New Year's night, the kind that was perfect for staying in, wrapped up in blankets with a drink in hand. But my girlfriend and I had spent the evening at a friend's party. We didn't mind it too much, though, as we had a good time catching up with people we hadn't seen in a while. By the time we left, it was already past 1:30 in the morning. We lived in the city, and the drive back from our friend's place, which was out in the suburbs, usually took around 20 minutes. It was the kind of drive where you could see the glow of streetlights fading away as you left the busier parts of town. The roads were quieter than usual, but still, there were more cars on the highway than you would expect for such an early hour. People were still out celebrating the new year. The usual hum of the tires on the road and the faint sound of the radio played in the background as we drove, but something about the night felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. As soon as we merged onto the highway, I noticed a car following us. Not just behind us, but way too close for comfort. I made a point to stay in the far right lane, hoping they'd pass us. It wasn't the first time I had dealt with a tailgater, and usually they'd zoom around, get their spot, and leave you alone. But this car didn't pass. Instead, it just stayed there, creeping closer and closer, almost like they were trying to touch the back of our bumper. I glanced over at my girlfriend, who had also noticed. "Did you cut them off or something?" she asked, clearly confused and a little concerned. "No, I didn't," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I flicked the turn signal on, planning to switch over to the middle lane. Still, the car didn't pass us. It just kept staying right behind, a few feet away, as if daring me to make a move. The highway stretched out in front of us, the road clear except for this one car following us. It felt strange, like I was being watched. I didn't want to worry my girlfriend, but it was starting to get uncomfortable. I checked the side mirror and could see the car's headlights reflecting in the darkened windows, its presence more pronounced with each mile. We drove like that for a few more minutes before I noticed the car still behind us, following our every move. I had planned to take an exit soon, but now, with the car stuck right behind us, it made everything feel 10 times worse. I sped up a little, hoping to get ahead and out of the car's way. As I did, the other car sped up too. They matched our speed exactly, keeping us in the same position as we approached the exit ramp. Now, with them alongside us, I could see that it was a cherry red Mustang, its headlights cutting through the night. I couldn't make out anything about the driver, though, since the windows were so darkly tinted. For a split second, I thought I saw some movement inside, but I couldn't be sure. I wasn't about to stare too long either. My eyes flicked back to the road ahead. I slammed on the brakes, trying to put some distance between us. The car in front of us swerved a little, but I didn't waste time. I quickly merged into the lane, pulling in front of them. That's when I saw it. A car with no license plate. No temporary tag either. My heart skipped a beat. Why would someone be driving a car like that, especially at this time of night? Now both of us were on edge. We could only guess who was behind the wheel. Maybe it was a drunk driver, or maybe it was something worse, something more dangerous. My girlfriend didn't like the idea of being followed like this, and I couldn't blame her. I didn't feel much safer, but I tried to stay calm for both of our sakes. We exited the highway, and so did the Mustang, still staying just ahead of us, weaving in and out of traffic, as if it had no care in the world. We pulled up to a red light, and I didn't want to look over, but I had to. The car slowed down, but it didn't turn. It stayed in the lane, right in front of us, as if waiting for us to do something. I didn't put my turn signal on, not yet. I didn't want to give them any idea of where we were going, though part of me wondered if it even mattered. They were already so close. I kept my eyes locked straight ahead, and my fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter. The car didn't use its turn signal either, which only made things more unsettling. It was almost like they were playing a game, watching us, seeing how long they could follow. I finally decided to make a move. I flicked on the blinker and turned into the right lane, hoping that would give me a chance to break free. But no, the Mustang followed, right into the lane with us. Now, it was obvious. This wasn't just a random encounter. They were intentionally trying to stay with us. My girlfriend's voice was tinged with worry now. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't normal. Nothing about this felt normal. Still, I kept telling her that it was probably just some punks messing around. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. We turned down another street, and for a moment, I thought I had shaken them. But then, in the distance, I saw the red Mustang, its headlights shining, still following us. It didn't stop, not for a second. It was relentless. They'd managed to keep up no matter how many turns I made, how many side streets I took. No matter what I did, they were still there. I started to panic. I needed to get rid of them. There was no telling what they were going to do next. As I pulled into a neighborhood, I quickly glanced in the rearview mirror. The Mustang was right behind us, gaining speed, coming closer. It had to be going over 100 miles per hour by now. My heart raced even faster as the car shrank the distance between us, almost like it was daring me to try and escape. I had to act. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my hands shaking as I explained what was happening. As I spoke with the dispatcher, I turned off the headlights to try and make it harder for the Mustang to see where we were going. I cut down another side street, hoping that it would work, that somehow I could get away. But the Mustang didn't let up. It followed right behind, as if there was no way they were going to stop until they got what they wanted. The dispatcher calmly told us to drive to the nearest police station. They'd have officers waiting in the parking lot to meet us. The station wasn't too far away, but it felt like miles. My mind raced with every turn, every stoplight. The road ahead was still clear, but the fear gnawed at me. What if we didn't make it? As we neared an intersection, the light turned red. The cars in front of us came to a halt. We didn't have much time. My foot slammed on the brake, and we stopped just in time. But that was when things got even worse. I watched in horror as the red Mustang pulled up behind us, the high beams blinding me. It felt like the world had stopped. I glanced in the side mirror and saw something that made my blood run cold. At least 3 masked people got out of the car. They moved quickly, approaching us in the dark. My girlfriend was frozen in fear, but I had no time to think. I laid on the horn, hoping someone, anyone, would notice and help. Then it happened. One of the masked figures rushed up to the passenger side and with one swift motion, smashed the window. My girlfriend screamed. The sound still haunts me. She was pulled toward the door, but we were lucky. The car in front of us, realizing what was happening, sped through the red light, clearing the way for us to drive forward. We gunned the engine, narrowly avoiding a crash, and sped through the intersection, still on the phone with the dispatcher. The Mustang didn't follow us anymore, and as we raced toward the police station, I couldn't believe what had just happened. My hands were still shaking as we pulled into the station, the adrenaline wearing off but the fear still lingering. We gave the police what little information we had, but without a license plate or a clear description of the people involved, there wasn't much they could do. We never heard anything about the Mustang or the masked figures again. To this day, I don't know what their intentions were or why they followed us. It was a freaky incident, one that neither my girlfriend nor I will ever forget. But we're just thankful that we made it out.
There's always a reason to be afraid.
A few years ago, on New Year's Eve, I was about 20 years old. I had always been the type of person who preferred quiet nights at home, spending time with my family. I never really liked the whole party scene. I always thought about how short life was, and how important it was to cherish the moments we had with the people we loved. My parents weren't going to be around forever, and I made sure to make the most of the time I had with them. I didn't mind staying in and keeping to myself, but this year, one of my friends was not going to let me get away with it. His name was Matt. I had known him since high school, and we'd been pretty good friends back then. However, after I moved away for college, we lost touch for a while. We had kept in contact off and on, but it wasn't the same. Matt was the type of person who loved to throw huge parties, and that's exactly what he was planning for New Year's Eve. His parents were going to be out of town that week in New York, and he had decided that this would be the perfect opportunity to throw the biggest party of the year. He kept asking me to come, and for weeks I told him no. I wasn't interested. I wasn't a party person, and I didn't really feel the need to go out and get drunk with a bunch of strangers. But after a lot of back and forth and a little bit of pressure, I finally agreed. I figured it would be good to catch up with Matt, and after all, it had been a couple of years since we had seen each other. It wasn't like I had any other plans, so I decided to give it a shot. I'd been stuck in my own little bubble for too long, and maybe it was time to get out and do something different. I arrived at his house a little after 8 p.m. The place was huge. His parents had a nice house in a quiet neighborhood, and it looked like he had invited just about everyone he knew. When I stepped inside, it was like walking into a completely different world. The music was loud, the lights were bright, and people were everywhere. There was a crowd of people in the living room, and others were dancing and mingling outside. The whole house was alive with energy, and for a moment, I stood there, feeling a little out of place. I didn't know anyone here except Matt, and that made me a little nervous. But as the night went on, I started to loosen up a bit. I grabbed a beer and wandered around the house, trying to get used to the atmosphere. The party was big, but it was still fun to see Matt again after all this time. He introduced me to a few people, and we talked about everything from school to our plans for the future. It was nice to catch up, and for a moment I was starting to enjoy myself. The crowd didn't seem so overwhelming anymore, and I even started dancing with a few of the girls Matt had introduced me to. By 9 p.m., the house was packed. There were easily around 100 people there. The DJ was playing upbeat music and people were dancing, drinking, and celebrating. Matt was busy running around, making sure everything was going smoothly. He had a whole crew of friends helping him, and it was clear that he was really into hosting. I wasn't much of a dancer, but I found myself tapping my foot to the beat and talking to a few more people as the night went on. As the evening continued, I started to feel more comfortable. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, and the party was in full swing. There was laughter everywhere, and everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. Matt kept trying to get me to talk to more girls, but I wasn't really into the idea. I wasn't shy, but I wasn't a big flirt either. I was just there to have a good time and catch up with Matt. At one point, I went inside the house to grab another beer. I was standing by the snack table, scanning the room for Matt, when I noticed a man standing alone by the bar. He was older, probably in his mid-40s, tall with glasses, and dressed in a plain shirt and jeans. There was something about him that didn't quite fit in with the rest of the partygoers. He didn't look like he was there to have a good time. His presence felt out of place. I glanced at him for a second, and then, to my surprise, he looked right back at me. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and something about it felt strange. I couldn't explain why, but the way he looked at me made me feel uneasy. Then, without warning, the man started to walk over to me. He had this calm, almost too composed expression on his face as he approached me. He didn't seem like he was in a hurry, but there was a certain purpose in his step. When he reached me, he introduced himself. "Hey, I'm Nate," he said, offering his hand. Nice to meet you," I replied, a little unsure of what to say. His handshake was firm, but it didn't feel warm. It felt forced, like he was trying too hard to be friendly. We exchanged pleasantries, and for a moment, it seemed like a normal conversation. He asked if I was enjoying the party, and I told him that I was. But then, out of nowhere, he started asking me more personal questions. "So, what do you do?" he asked, his tone casual, but it felt too probing for someone I had just met. I told him a little about myself, but the conversation started to feel weird. He didn't seem interested in what I had to say. Instead, he asked more questions, ones that didn't seem to have much to do with the party or the people around us. It was as though he was trying to get under my skin. I wasn't sure what he was after, but the conversation was starting to feel uncomfortable. There was a long pause, and I felt the weight of the silence. It was like the conversation had hit a dead end. I looked around the room, trying to find an excuse to walk away. "Well, it was nice meeting you, Nate," I said, forcing a smile. I turned to walk away, but then as I looked back at him, I saw it. He was staring at me. Not a casual glance, but a long, unblinking stare. His face was expressionless, almost too still. The way he was looking at me made my skin crawl. I didn't know what it was, but something about his stare felt unsettling. I quickly turned away, trying to shake off the feeling that had crept up on me. The rest of the night went on like any other party. People were still dancing, laughing, and celebrating the new year. I didn't see Nate again, and I tried to push the weird encounter out of my mind. I had a good time with the people I knew, but that moment with Nate kept bugging me. It was like something didn't sit right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Eventually, it was time for the countdown to the new year. The whole party gathered outside in the backyard, waiting for the clock to strike midnight. Fireworks lit up the sky, and everyone cheered as the new year began. We all raised our glasses and wished each other a happy new year. The moment was filled with excitement, but then something happened that would change the tone of the night entirely. As we watched the fireworks, a loud scream suddenly pierced the air. It was a woman's scream, one that sounded absolutely terrified. Everyone froze for a moment, and then we all turned to the house. The scream had come from inside. My heart raced, and I felt a chill run down my spine. What the hell had happened? Matt and a couple of other guys immediately ran into the house, heading toward the stairs where the scream had come from. I followed behind, my mind racing. What was going on? Was someone hurt? My legs felt like lead as I moved through the crowd and up the stairs, trying to make sense of what was happening. When we reached the top of the stairs, we found a girl standing in the hallway, shaking with fear. She was pale, her eyes wide with terror. "What happened?" Matt asked, his voice frantic. She could barely speak at first, but then she managed to get the words out. "I was in the bathroom," she said, her voice shaking, "and I saw an eye. There was an eye looking at me from the closet." She started to cry, her body trembling. The realization hit us all like a ton of bricks. Someone had been hiding in the bathroom closet. A stranger. Matt immediately called the police, and we waited for them to arrive. The whole house was on edge, everyone nervous and unsure of what was going on. The girl who had seen the eye was still in shock, but we did our best to comfort her and make her feel safe. The police arrived shortly after, and they immediately began searching the house. When they questioned the man, Nate, he didn't resist. He admitted to everything. He had just walked into the house like he was part of the crowd, and no one had noticed him. He had hidden in the bathroom closet, waiting for an opportunity to do who knows what. The police later found out that Nate was wanted for multiple assaults, including one on his ex-wife. The details of his past were chilling, and it made the whole situation even more terrifying. He had been at the party the entire time, just walking around like he belonged, and we had no idea who he was or what he was capable of. The rest of the night was a blur. We all tried to get back to the party, but the mood had completely shifted. The fun and excitement of the new year had been replaced by an overwhelming sense of fear. No one felt safe. I couldn't stop thinking about the girl in the bathroom and what could have happened if she hadn't screamed. In the days that followed, we learned that Nate had been arrested and charged with several crimes. Thankfully, nothing worse had happened, but the thought of what could have been haunted me. I couldn't shake the image of that cold, emotionless stare he had given me earlier in the night. Years have passed since that New Year's Eve, but I still think about that night. I have a girlfriend now, and I'm much more cautious about the people I let into my life. That night taught me to always be aware of my surroundings, to never let my guard down, and to trust my instincts. The world can be unpredictable, and you never know what might be lurking in the shadows. Which story setting scared you the most? Let me know in the comments.